Good evening, everyone. A special day, Teachers' Day today, and we'll be guided by mentors of life, two exceptionally well-known people, authors, clinical psychologists, Mimansa Singh Tanwar and Kamna Chibber. They are going to guide us about our learnings that we've had from a mental health perspective, as all of us have gone through COVID-19. And I think what better day than Teachers' Day. And I also want to put in a word, especially for Pragati Vichar, Delhi Book Fair. The fact that you thought about having a conversation on mental health, which I think is exceptionally important, not just in these times, but forever and ever after. And big thank you, Shabri. You continue to be the mental health advocate that you are and continue to find spaces for mental health conversations to happen. So on that note, without taking much time from our renowned experts, I shall start this conversation. Kamna, coming to you first. COVID and mental health, your learnings.
The biggest learning, perhaps, during this entire time period has been the role that support systems can play. Every individual has recognized the need to have robust support systems, to be able to connect to people, recognizing the role that each individual can play to be able to support the other. There have been so many experiences, difficult experiences that people have gone through. And despite everything that has been going on, the one thing that COVID showed everyone was that people have the ability to come together. And I think that has been perhaps the biggest learning that we've all taken away, because prior to this, in the rigmarole of our everyday lives, we would continuously keep on going from one thing to the next thing, not realizing that every relationship also needs to be invested in. And that has been something which has gotten reinforced during this period, something that mental health experts always talk about and keep on insisting on, that nothing can replace the family, nothing can replace your social support network. And that's something that really needs to be emphasized on. And COVID really highlighted that during these difficult times.
Yes, support system. If you ask me, then if you were to compare any individual with significant support system vis-a-vis those who did not have the right kind of support system, the outcomes have been very different. And I think that's where the learning lies, isn't it? That if you have the right kind of support system, but how do you get the support system? Like what Kamna said, you invest in relationships. We'll continue to talk about this because I do feel support systems has been one of the key learnings of COVID-19. I'll take that question to you, Mimansa. Support systems, how have you seen in your practice people coming and talking to you, how people's understanding of relationships and support systems have changed, and its correlation with our learnings from COVID?
I would first like to start by saying that couldn't this couldn't have been a better day than talking about on a Teachers' Day, where we continue to learn from our teachers and mentors. And of course, you being the mentor, we've learned from you. And COVID, which has also been it has been a teaching moment for all of us as well. I think in the last 15 months, what we've seen is a lot that life has taught us, and has guided us through various things, has also made us realize our shortcomings at various levels. And I think this is one of the biggest learnings that we need to recognize that we've had in the last 15 months. And we continue to just keep on learning from what has happened. Support systems, of course, I mean, I don't think so there is meaning or there can be a better pillar of strength than a support system. We've seen this in our workspace, where we've continued to support each other through difficult times that some of us have gone through. We've also seen that in of course, people that we've continued to speak to in our clinical space, that places where there have been support systems, people have been able to bounce back much faster. They've been able to, I mean, their resilience has been remarkably different. And the way support systems come together to sort of give you that kind of validation, reassurance, hope. I think that's one of the biggest things, the co-shared space in which you're just able to listen to somebody else, that yes, we are in this together, we've gone through this together, And that support in itself creates hope and resilience in each one of us.
Okay. I mean, even if you look at the biopsychosocial model, not just of causative factors of mental health, but even if you look at it from a treatment point of view, the biopsychosocial model, where we so much focus upon the social component, which means it is in that support system, that environment, that family and friends and colleagues is where so many of our solutions and betterment of the quality of our life lies. Kamna, wouldn't that apply across the board? I mean, if COVID is teaching us, then we need to take it forward and understand the fact that support systems is probably the first treatment that is there for any kind of a problem.
Absolutely, no denying that. Social support system can play such a prominent role in creating the right kind of foundation for individuals to even be able to seek help. A lot of times, especially during this entire period of COVID, what people realized was that if they were not aware of certain things, they could rely on others. People have come together. People who've not known each other have come together. And this is something that we have seen across social media platforms. We always end up referring to how there are a lot of negatives which can come about as a result of being too much involved on social media. But I think the one positive that came through during this entire period was people who did not know each other came together, provided information, created awareness, helped people locate resources, something which was unheard of previously for anyone. And this was something which got highlighted during this entire period of time, that we needed to find ways to be able to come together as a collective to support each other. Whether it was at your workplace, whether it was within the community that you stayed, if you did not know your neighbor, this was the time that you got to know people who stayed right next to you, who you would not have had the opportunity to even recognize previously, because you were just going from work to home, meeting certain friends, but not knowing who stays around you. This became the time when you could reach out to someone and tell them, my family has been diagnosed with COVID, we need certain support. People could reach out. People were leaving each other food who they did not know at all. And these are stories, experiences that we have heard of from people who we know ourselves, from people who we work with within our clinical spaces as well. People were surprised. But also what happened was it restored hope. It restored a sense of positivity to say, even though this is a very difficult time period, we're struggling with resources, we're struggling with maintaining physical health, mental well-being as well, loneliness is there, but there seems to be a way in which we can come through this in a better way by recognizing the kind of role that people around us can play in our lives. And there can be a lot of good which can come through even these difficult, really, really challenging experiences that different individuals have gone through.
Both of you have talked about hope a lot. So how about putting more emphasis on that and understanding that we've heard this a lot throughout the pandemic, hope. But if I were to ask, like any other individual would want to ask experts like you both, how does one instill hope? From where do one get it? It's not that hope is available in the marketplace and you can buy it as kgs, or it's not that you can read something and suddenly find it. As an individual, what can I do to find hope, not just for myself, but my loved ones? So that, since both of you mentioned, Mimamsa, where does one get hope from?
One gets hope when you don't look at things in a permanent way. You recognize that this is going to pass. This is not something which is permanent. You get hope from people around you when you look at things, despite in the most down moments as well. You're able to look at some of the good around you. You're able to see stories which gives you that sense of hope, that yes, there is change, there is positive change which is possible, there is positivity that still exists around you in simple small actions that people do towards each other, as community, as families, as colleagues, as friends. That's where hope comes from. Hope is on what we base our our forward movement. So if we won't have hope, we won't be able to go forward. It gives us the direction.
Okay. Kamna, your thoughts. How does one instill hope?
You start small. That would be the place that I would emphasize, that you need to start small. by looking at the small things which can help you feel and recognize that there are things which are also going well in life. When you are in the midst of a very difficult circumstance, your attention automatically gets diverted towards everything that is going bad. Your mind is focusing on all the negatives, all the things which are not panning out well for you in your life. And at that time, it becomes very hard to keep maintaining that hope. But one of the simplest things that you can do is you start finding the small things in your day to day existence which could indicate you towards the positive, the good which is still there. Because no individual's life would be completely full of negatives alone. It's about making that extra effort, and it does require effort to be able to keep on pointing yourself in that direction of saying that there would be something good. Let me try and make that attempt to look for it. At the same time, it links to your support systems as well. You try and surround yourself by people who can help you, assist you, and point you in that direction when you lose track of it. You need sometimes that kind of guidance, sometimes that kind of direction to come from the outside to point you to say that, okay, this is an element that you're missing on. And that really can help you move in that direction. These are two simpler ways in which you can try and find hope. And you try and cultivate meaning for your own self. You do small actions to be able to see that, yes, you can also bring hope, not just for your own self, but for others. That is how you work towards it.
Yes, in fact, during the most difficult times, when we were all struggling with COVID one way or the other, I found hope in inspiring stories. I found hope in the way healthcare practitioners worked. I found hope in looking at Samaritans' work. I found hope in alumni reaching out to each other. I found hope in the fact that people would take each other's duties to help support. I found hope in the patients children had. I found hope in the support that senior citizens gave in these difficult times. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't filter for the positives that are happening as well, and if you're just lost in the negative that happens around us, that's when you lose hope. And like one of the things that Mimamsa said, that if you understand that there is a cross-section to life, we will all be here. There will be a time when COVID won't be. That's a fact. I was told on a Spaces conversation by Kedar Tilve, a psychiatrist from Mumbai, and it has stayed with me. We are all going to be here. COVID won't be. And that's what we keep on needing to listen to and remind ourselves. So when I feel uncertain that what will be tomorrow, I also need to remember another tomorrow is there where COVID won't be there. So how about taking some learnings? And that's why I think this particular topic of learnings from COVID is so important. And what better day than Teachers' Day? So when I was hearing the two of you speak about support system, and I realized that in the last 8-10 months, I've talked more to my batchmates and school alumni than I've ever done. And what nostalgia, what truth in relationships. The sheer brilliance of not having social media to build relationships. When you were born in an age when I was born and passed out school when phones were still not there, the smartphones weren't there. I think the whole relationship component was very different. And I'd like to believe that youth today has also realized that the number of followers don't quite matter. What matters is that when you are, if at all, struggling, do you have that one person whom you could just call and would be there? And to me, that is what COVID did. Stories from RWA supporting each other, taking care of people's food, ensuring that supplies are there. Stories from people who shared cylinders, tablets, people who supported each other, heartwarming stories of people staying connected, to people who were in isolation, quarantine, hospitalized through video calls. All of this also we've experienced, and all of this is what also gave us hope. So when we reflect on COVID years down the lane, yes, there were learnings and we've gone through hardships, no question about that. We've lost loved ones, we've lost a lot as well. But we've also, in all these losses, seen so much of gain of humanity. And that needs to be a part of our modern day future conversations, and more so in our educational system. And that's where I take my next question to. I'm on some other day, a teacher's day, school children would have dressed as teachers, as senior students would have dressed as teachers, taken classes, teachers would have been pampered, and lots of fun and niceties happening in school. But today it's all online. But students have also shown a remarkable adaptability, and they've also shown their own resilience in their own way. Yes, very tough times, but also, like I have been saying, first period in your pajama, lying down in your bed, not too bad. Not too bad if that was a wish list ever. But let's focus on children for a while. It's been difficult for parents. It's been difficult for children. Yet we've somehow gone through a year plus without a board exam for a change. Mimamsa, and I can see just when we were talking about children, I saw a peeping child behind you. I'd much rather have a chat with a 7-year-old than the two of you, because that's where the hope lies and that's where the vibrant energy lies. Always a pleasure to have you peep in, little Vani Shri. And I'm sure I'd love to ask you also a few questions. If you can come back, I wouldn't mind that. But meanwhile, if you decide not to come back, and I understand, listening to these two psychologists learn and teach us on Teachers Day, we'd much rather have some fun. I'll call you after this session. Okay, Mimamsa, you do these Raising Confident Children parenting conversations, an author of Raising Confident Children. I'm told that your next book on parenting is about halfway done, and it's going to come by the next couple of months. So parenting learnings. What learnings for parents in COVID, Mimamsa?
Oh, loads and loads. So many mantras that I had to find and keep reminding myself every day to survive these days while my child was having a fun time. Let be. I think that has been one of my things to sort of, every time I would feel that there is so much happening, and and of course children are going to have their own natural responses to the kind of time that they've been exposed to. They've been in the most comfortable environments, but that can still sometimes take over the best of us, and that can happen to us. So it can also happen to kids. So patience is what one learns. Learning to control one's emotions, direct them in a better way is what one learns. One also learns how children mirror you and remind you how you need to be a better adult. If you're not one, then you're reminded some of these things that I talk on my life sometimes, that you said this, but you're not doing this, so you might as well do this.
The hypocrisy of being an adult. The hypocrisy of being an adult. If your child comes and tell you that, oh, you famous psychologist, you were giving this lecture to everybody, but you don't follow it. Bad role model, Mimamsa Singh Tanwa.
So no, I am becoming a good role model. So which is why you need children around you. You need children to make you good role models.
Whether you are becoming a good role model or not, that's between me and your child. We'll discuss, we'll give you the points, and we'll figure it out with how much you have to go. Right now, you're not passing that exam, so you need to put a lot more effort. Kamna, coming to you here, what relationship expert, so many books that you've written. How about this? The relationship between the two aspects. Although Mimamsa has answered the first one, and I'll come back to her for the second one as well. Two aspects of relationship: the parent-child relationship and the parent-parent relationship. So how about you first speak about the learnings for parents and then the learnings for a couple?
The learnings for parents, perhaps the biggest learning has been to learn to listen to your children as well. Parents are often used to giving a lot of guidance, and this entire pandemic has taught them that it's probably very important to also start listening to your children, give them a lot more space, a lot more free time. We also got into a habit of structuring time for children a lot, and during this pandemic that flexibility had to come in. Children could not go for classes, there was no external medium available. I think parents have learned to have fun as well. They have learned how to play the games which their children do, new games which perhaps never existed during our time. It's been a revelatory experience for a lot of parents, and they have learned how to find joy in various different ways. Nevertheless, of course, for parents, it's also been very challenging because they've had to find ways to balance their multiple roles and also ensure that they're taking care of their child's growth, their development. There has been a lot of concern around how my child is growing up, their learning, their social emotional growth, their relationships outside. Um, and parents have learned how to work on them within the space that they have, and they've learned the importance of, I think, during this period, the importance of having social support systems. Yet again, what we started from, because they have been able to rely on family members, grandparents, their cousins, creating those groups and being able to engage on virtual platforms to be able to provide your child those unique experiences so that they can stay connected to the outside world, yet take care of themselves and continue to grow and develop in a good way. I think that has been something which parents have had to really do and take care of, and they've had to be very mindful of their own actions during this entire process. Parents, as a result, of course, have gone through their own difficulties. I think a lot of parents did experience challenges within their own relationship. How do you balance things between the two of you? Everyone has had to partake in different roles within the household. It's been, for some people, they've been able to navigate that entire space a lot easily, but for others, they would have had to communicate a lot more. Something, again, which I felt, which a lot of people within mental health field had started going a little missing within relationships within the home space for a lot of individuals. And during this pandemic, everyone has had to find ways to communicate with each other, using language, learning to understand each other, learning to read each other's non-verbals as well. This has been the opportunity that the pandemic has provided you to get to know each other a lot more and find the patience within you, the gumption within you to be able to also start tolerating the differences that are there and find the ability to be able to resolve conflicts in a more comfortable manner, in a more easy manner, not allowing things to fly off the handle, and being able to talk about things, talk through things instead of getting very conflictual about it. There has been a lot which has happened during this period of time. And I think couples have also learned how to come together to support each other because they have been able to see for each other that it's not easy for either partner. And that, I think, has been one of the biggest experiences for a lot of individuals who've been in relationships with each other during this period of time.
So much knowledge. I must say thank you on this Happy Teachers Day, Kamini Chubber, for teaching us with such wonderful things. As I go to my next teacher, it's just I just enjoy this aspect of being a student. It brings so much of nostalgia. And it, you remember, you just start becoming younger again when you are listening to teachers. So I'll go to my second teacher for the day, Mimasa Singh Tanwar. You've spoken a lot about mindfulness. So how about you help us understand that how mindfulness has helped individuals, sometimes with their knowledge that yes, I am doing this because it's mindful. Sometimes even people like me who have no clue about mindfulness, but then when I talk to you, I realize, oh, I was being mindful when I was watering my plants, or oh, I was being mindful when I was doing some breathing exercises. So your thoughts about mindfulness, the COVID experience, the learning?
I think as simple as that, man. Mindfulness is about just being able to enjoy your here and now. And I think that has been one of the things that has been so important for us in a time which has been so uncertain. So if I would not have been able to enjoy those moments with my family members, if I would have not been able to enjoy those moments by my own self, if I would have not been able to enjoy my moments of everything that I do in my day to day, vis-a-vis the rush that one would be in a pre-COVID time, and it was just so automatic. I mean, I think it was just so subliminal that one would not even realize that you're just rushing from one thing to the other. This time gave us that moment to at least recognize the importance of how can you enjoy simple things. And I think that's what mindfulness is. So if you are and you have a mini forest in your room, as one can see, that is a result of mindfulness that you've been practicing. And the mindfulness that also happens between a student and a teacher. We both tend to teach each other a lot of things. So in any which way,
I would agree. You teach me a lot. Thank you.
I'm saying even from a student, one learns, right? So either ways, one is learning from you. But no, but I think that has been one of the things that actually kept my calm in moments where I felt that things are just going all over the place. Those simple moments when you are moving from and managing multiple roles and responsibilities, being able to just play some music and just be calm. And Hindustani music happens to be our favorite too, so that brings in a lot of mindfulness for you and even for me. And um,
It does. In fact, that's what I think all of us need to reflect. I mean, some of the learnings that I feel while I was talking about mindfulness was we learn minimalistic living. Let's accept it. We all learned it. Now, whether we learned it by choice or not doesn't matter, but we did learn it. We did realize that we can manage with the bare minimum. We also realized that it's a way you look at it. You don't always need to party, and life can well bring you party moments without needing to party. And we also realize that we are good enough to take care of our own homes, that we can actually spend quality time with the very few people who live with us. And we realize that we've lost so much time not spending time with them. We realize that we could be connected with our friends and extended family. And like I say, in the apadhari of the world and the day-to-day living, we just lost track of people. So that also has happened. And I think these are learnings which are very, very important for all of us to understand that COVID came as a teacher. Have we learned? Question one. Question two, are we going to implement this learning for years to come? If the answer is yes, then humankind will be a better version of itself. If the answer is no, then we really are a very, very stupid species that even hardships can teach us, even difficult moments can teach us. And that's the only way to look at it. What side of the line you want to be? Smart, evolving, or they're not so smart and stupid. But on that note, I shall move forward and take the questions that we've received from a lot of you to ask our teachers of the day, our experts, Kamna Chitbar. You are in conversation with Kamna Chitbar and Mimansa Singh Tanwar, two authors, clinical psychologists, mental health advocates, speakers at various forums, nationally and internationally, are here today as we end Pragati, which are the last session for a fabulous Delhi Book Fair 2021. And I must again thank Shabri Prasad for this fabulous thought process of bringing in so many different topics that matter to our day-to-day life, that these conversations matter because there are so many learnings in these conversations. So going back to Kamna Chitbar, so we learned work from home. A lot of us still continue to do part work from home, part outside. Your thoughts, maybe some very basic, if you can give us a few tips on how individuals who are either working from home or a mix and match of going in the workspace and both, how can people manage that best?
Very important to maintain certain schedules. You need to have a start time, you need to have a stop time. It's very important to keep maintaining those basics in place, because that routine allows you to be able to feel a little more in control of your time, and it also allows you to be able to integrate the other things which are very important for your well-being into your schedules as well. It's extremely important to keep balancing things out. You have to learn to draw a certain line, draw that boundary to say, okay, now that my work has ended, I go back to my family, I sit down, I spend time with them. It's very essential to also incorporate time for the things that you like to do. We talked about music. Right now there is art, there could be cooking, there could be dance, there could be something that you like to tinker around with. Every individual would have some area of interest which they must explore, and that is something that is very, very critical in helping you ensure that you're taking care of your own self. At the same time, it's also very important that you keep maintaining your physical well-being by taking care of your diet, your exercise, your sleep. And that is something which I feel for a lot of people during this pandemic was becoming compromised, because people were on their gadgets, constantly consuming a lot of information, a lot of content from virtual media platforms. And it was very important that people need to focus on their sleep schedules. You need to have that in place, because otherwise it builds up a lot of fatigue and it compromises your ability to be productive, to do the chores that you need to do within your house, and to keep on maintaining your own feeling of goodness as you navigate through circumstances through the course of your day. So some of these basics absolutely need to be in place. At the same time, I feel, especially for people who are transitioning into moving back into their workspaces in the physical format, it's very important to remember that you must continue to follow COVID appropriate behavior. That's one of the learnings that we are talking about, that it's very essential that we not forget that COVID has not disappeared. It's not gone. It's still very much there. And it is every individual's responsibility to ensure that they take care of their own safety so that they can ensure the safety of their loved ones, of their families, their colleagues. And you will be able to do that if you continue to follow the protocols, the guidelines which are available by different agencies, by the government, and we do not make a mockery of it by stepping out continuously, by taking unnecessary risks, by saying that, okay, it doesn't seem that the cases are there as much, and so it's okay for me to start going out. Step out only for the essential things. Make sure that you're following the protocols. And also, if you know someone who's not following them, please point it out to them. Do not hesitate to say the right thing, because that is something which is very, very important. We often hesitate to stand up. And this is something which would require that each and everyone stands up and ensures that not just they themselves, but people that they know continue to follow the right kind of measures. I think these would be very, very critical as we are continuing with this transition process.
Yes, COVID appropriate behavior, please, everyone, as we go through a transition. And remember that COVID appropriate behavior is our vaccine number one, and vaccine is our vaccine, and we are pro-vaccine. And we must ensure that we encourage our friends and colleagues, because when all of us are vaccinated, that's how we build a true immunity as well. But coming to you, Mimamsa, Kamala talked about tips for work from home. Schools are gradually reopening. I mean, yes, we are in a bit of a transition, and we'll have more clarity over the next few weeks. Your tips for parents as schools gradually open, how should they help children go through this transition?
Any transition for that matter is not very easy. And I think we need to just be able to be there, support our children while they transition into the world back in a physical space. And of course, worries are going to be natural, anxieties are going to be natural. Parents would have it. Children may have their own questions, their own fears, but it's important to continue to follow precautions. And I think I would like to add one thing. I mean, in this entire process, what has been important is, and I've been saying this again and again, I mean, there is no dilution of purpose. You can't dilute purpose. If you dilute your purpose, then you would not know what your goal is. And if you would not know your purpose, then of course, I mean, the goal of not following, I mean, following COVID appropriate behavior will go into dilutions. If our purpose is to come out of this time period, safety does not have a gray when it comes to that. Safety is either it's safe or it's unsafe. So if we recognize that, yes, our purpose is to be safe, to continue to be safe, yes, we follow precautions, we follow our COVID appropriate behavior. At the same time, you also recognize that anything that you do, which brings you on the other side of the line, like you mentioned, is something which is going to only take you in a positive way forward. And that is going to instill hope and resilience. We've seen various people leading us in crisis, all age groups, coming from different backgrounds. And now we are in a phase of transition. We still need to continue to have that. And along with that, I think mental health is something that we really need to look at as a time where we have to understand the importance of emotional well-being. I mean, we've been talking about it in the last 15 months. We need to continue to keep talking about it. It's not over yet. And it is going to, how each child transition well, how each parent transitions well, how each individual transitions well into the physical space and back into our, I don't know if there can be a third word, from new normal to back to normal. If we have to transition back into that, our emotional well-being, our mental well-being has to be our topmost priority still, where we continue to keep looking at it and we continue to keep ensuring what is it that we can do to ensure that my child, my family, teachers for that matter, people working in community for that matter, any workspace, organizations, wherever you go, how well are you able to take that into account?
Okay, I'll come back to you, Mimamsa, for this one question, and then I'll go to Kamna. A lot of things that both of you have said when it came to support systems, and you talked about transitions and you talked about seeking help, is a form of psychological first aid, isn't it? So should psychological first aid not be integral in our academic systems? What do you think schools could do to ensure that psychological first aid becomes an integral component of the environment in schools, and also, frankly, at our workplaces?
So psychological first aid, of course, I do feel that while we are talking about COVID care kits, while people are going back and children are going back in schools and teachers are going back in the physical space to teach, why not also include mental health care kits as a psychological first aid over there? I think it's essential that we, like I said earlier, that we place that importance to mental health that it needs to be. And we train teachers, we train staff, we as an individual take that responsibility to know a little more about what psychological first aid is, upgrade ourselves in that skill, another learning that we need to have for ourselves, upgrade ourselves, because that's something that we need to keep doing, and learn about psychological first aid on how we can provide this to our children, to students, because teachers are going to be first responders. In organizations, your colleague, your managers could be the first responders. So in different place, of course, it has a lot of meaning.
Okay, Kamna, your thoughts on the fact that A, psychological first aid, and B, mental health curriculum. Your thoughts on how they can be integrated in schools, because we do realize in COVID that support system, communication, social skills, life skills, problem solving skills, creativity, some of these basic life skills, and the stigma around help seeking or mental health, the stereotypy that impacts people, all of this put together can actually be so much change if you provide for a mental health curriculum in schools and psychological first aid. Your thoughts, both of you have written, a lot of you may know about it, a very good mental health curriculum with Macmillan publications. So how about that experience you share with us and the importance and how it can be integrated with schools?
One of the first things that I learned when I had entered the space of mental health was that mental health is not just about mental health related illnesses. It's about so much more. And we talk about psychological, social, emotional well-being. And how do you do that? You do that by imparting skills to people. And those skills need to start at the very basic level. The most basic level is the schools. It's the universities. That's where you start talking about these very, very important concepts. And you start integrating that within the curriculum, and which was the whole idea when a few years ago we wrote the mental health curriculum with Macmillan. That was the whole idea, that mental health does need to become a conversation within the school system, because there is no other substitute. There is no other way that we can reach out to large segments of the population without making it into a mainstream conversational point within the educational system itself. And it's very, very critical that we talk about mental health curriculum, we talk about psychological first aid, because the fact is that we do have a situation within India, within the world, in fact, where mental health problems are steadily increasing. There is a paucity of experts. We do require more and more people to be able to support the mental health needs of the country. And those experts will not be available tomorrow. So what would psychological first aid do? It equips individuals within the community to be able to come together and support others before it becomes a problem which needs to reach a severe level where we get taxed in our resources to be able to provide the right kind of care. if every individual is equipped with the basic skills to be able to support people around them, it could act as a very, very good support to be able to ensure that people can take care of themselves before something becomes a mental health related illness. And this is not about the biological part. The biology will always exist, and there will be people who will require psychiatric and psychological care. There's no doubt about that. But a lot of other issues can be mediated if we could impart psychological first aid skills, mental health related information, knowledge and understanding to people at all levels, all segments of society. That's something that is very, very critical and important, and what we need to keep on working towards.
Okay, before we wind up, let me ask you a couple of more personal questions. So Raising Confident Children, your book with Rupa Publications, tell me, why did you write it? Kamna, you first and then Mimamsa. Quick ones.
Children are the future. They are the ones who are going to take over. We have all gone through our experiences. We need to ensure that they are the ones who can take things forward in a far better manner than what we have been able to provide them. And it's so important that we realize that parenting is a skill. It's something that you can acquire. There are various components to parenting. And so if you have the right kind of information available at your disposal, you will certainly be able to ensure that you have children who are confident, who will be leaders, who will reach to their full potential. That is something which drove us to write this first book, which we wrote about parenting, which was Raising Confident Children.
Okay, Mimamsa, two parts of this. Why did you write Raising Confident Children? And I am told that was a 52-week guide, and now you are writing the 365 of parenting. How about telling what makes you write these parenting books besides my favorite person standing behind and listening to me? Yes.
A lot of stories from her, of course. But I think for me, Raising Confident Children was raising confident adults first. I think as parents, we are sometimes not very confident. We can have a lot of doubts, a lot of questions, a lot of other things, and we tend to go a lot more on hearsay. We tend to go a lot more on comparison, looking things around us. I think we need to recognize that it's about parenting is not merely just the experience, but there is a scientific skill to it. And it is more not just about being confident, which is just about feeling good about yourself, but it involves so many other process and steps to it. And as adults, we may believe that we are good in some of these things, but we are not actually. And one of the things which I feel that has been there always is a bad listener. And I think as adults, and specifically with all these gadgets around us, we've just become worse listeners, and that's a very important part of confidence. And the other part which we are doing right now is 365 days of, oh my God, questions. Each and every question that a parent may have ever in their mind is what we are thinking to do. So let's see how that goes. So I'm always on a watch out. What can I pick?
Parents, if you want your question to be answered by Mimamsa in a next book, write in to her, and maybe that question may help her complete that book on time. We're running out of time. This conversation could have gone on and on. My thoughts as we wind this conversation up, like I said, it couldn't have been a better day than Teachers' Day to talk about the learnings of COVID. I do see COVID as a teacher. I do see COVID as an opportunity for humankind to become a better version of its own self. And if there was one thing that I learned was adaptability. We all have the adaptability in us, and we somehow tend to neglect and forget it, because we can adapt to crisis. We can learn from crisis. We can better from crisis. And that's my mental health learning. And somewhere around all this, the single most important aspect of life is values. COVID taught us, if me, if all of us stick to our values, we'll stay connected, we'll stay optimistic, there'll be hope, there'll be altruism, there'll be togetherness, and we'll continue to come over obstacles one after the other. On that note, thank you, Pragati Vichar. Thank you, Delhi Book Fair. Thank you, Shapri Prasad, and all of you who've joined us on this conversation on mental health. Let's keep prioritizing mental health forever. Thank you.